Welcome to the Long Run with Joel and Christy. I'm Christy, and today we're going to be talking about my experience growing up below the poverty line in Mississippi in the 70s and 80s. Um, as you can see, Joel is not with me, and the reason why is because while his family wasn't wealthy, they probably were considered low income. They were not below the poverty line like I was, so he felt like this was a topic for me alone to cover. He has heard a lot of the things that I experienced, but yeah, he just felt like this was a me topic. I want to do this kind of as a little bit of like a chat. I did bring a big gigantic cup with me. It does not have coffee in it. I don't drink coffee out of cups quite this large. I actually use this when I drink teas, and so this is peppermint tea that I have, and I just want to make this kind of like a relaxing chat with you. I do plan to tell you my experiences, and also tell you a few things at the end that I hope that if you are struggling or you feel the grips of poverty right now, that you will, maybe it'll help you out, at least understand it from a child's perspective. Um, because I'll be honest with you, as an adult, even when Joel lost his job 10 years ago, um, we had, saved up money, and he also had a, a severance package. So while we did struggle to pay all of our bills, we would not be what you consider what this experience was, what I'm about to tell you about my childhood. We never went that far into the poverty level that we were struggling like what I'm about to tell you. Okay? All right, so first I want to back all the way up and tell you my parents' education levels, because that's going to help you understand why we were in poverty. A huge part of it was because of their education levels. My mother dropped out of school when she was in the 7th grade, I think. She did have jobs up until the point that she got married. But after getting married, she was a mom, a housewife, whatever you want to call it. And I will say there would be two obstacles to my mother having a job at that time. One would have been obviously having to pay someone else to keep the kids. And the other one was she was terrified of driving. And she did not know how to do it at all. She was completely so scared that she would just freeze up. I remember as a child, one time my dad tried to teach her how to drive, and she was in the car, in the driver's seat, and another car started coming from the other direction, and she actually drove our car into the ditch because she was so scared that the other car was going to hit her. So yeah, she was completely terrified, and could not seem to get past it. And my dad would just say, "Okay, I give up." That's so. Anyway, they would have had, if she had worked, she would have had to pay for someone to keep the kids when she wasn't at home. They would have had to have two cars instead of one. And she would have had to get over her fear of driving. So there was a lot of obstacles to that. But anyway, I digress. The point is, she never worked outside the home. She was a mom, a housewife, that kind of thing. All right, so she didn't contribute in a bringing money in thing. She contributed by, taking care of everything in the house and making sure that the kids were taken care of, that kind of thing. My dad got to, I believe it was the 10th grade, which is impressive because the problem he had was every year when it was cotton season, my grandfather would remove all the boys, all his sons, out of school and make them work the cotton fields. And he didn't own a cotton field of his own. It was working in other people's cotton fields to provide for the family so that they could have income come in, he would make all the sons quit school, drop out every year, and work in the fields to bring in more income so they would make it through the rest of the year. So it was very difficult for him to actually finish school in a year, like one full year, because he was getting pulled out of school every year. So I think it was the 10th grade where he finally just dropped out for good. And he started working in different farms. He did some work with as a lineman, like with the electricity company, but at some point started working as a dairy hand. He did not own a dairy farm. He worked for a dairy farmer, and he did that our entire childhood. He worked in a dairy farm. Most dairy farms will provide their employee a house to live in, not a good one necessarily, but they'll provide something. So growing up, we always had a house to live in, but that didn't mean the utilities were free or anything like that. I remember somewhere around like junior high school, somewhere around in there, he was actually given a raise. He had already worked at the farm that I grew up on. He'd already worked there for a good 10 years before he got his first raise. And they raised his salary up to $170 a week. And so that would be, I got my notes right here so I can remember what the amounts were, $684 per month, or just under $9,000 per year. And there was a small brick block house that was provided for us, and it covered some of the utilities. And by some of the utilities, I mean, like, I believe it was, the deal was they would pay $100 of the utilities, and if we spent any more than $100 of utilities, we had to cover the rest. So water, electricity, any of that stuff, we were responsible for that if it went over $100 total. So my parents obsessed over, like lights not being turned on for no reason. You couldn't go in your room and just relax in your room. You had to stay in the living room during the daytime because the lights could not be on and radios playing or anything like that. None of that could just be on for being on sake. You had to stay in the living room or you had to go outside and play. So a lot of times, like in the winter, my sister, brothers, and I would have to share one bedroom because they didn't want heat on in more than one room at night. And then in the summer, when it got really hot, because we were from South Mississippi, sometimes it got really, really hot, we would have to go into one room again and share one fan, oscillating fan. And like have the windows up or whatever, because there wasn't, like, we didn't have air conditioning, we didn't even have a window unit. There was nothing there to cool the room down besides that one oscillating fan. They allowed us to take a bath on Tuesday, Thursday, and Saturday night, and they ran the water one time in the bathtub, and we took turns taking a bath. My poor brothers always were the last ones allowed to take a bath because the girls got to go first. But always sharing the exact same water. So obviously it was dirty and cold water every minute that it sat there. It was getting colder and dirtier. So bless their hearts. Honestly, I feel bad for them for having to take a bath later. But that was one thing that we did, was just fill up the bathtub that one time. That's what they did. Um, they bought shampoo and soap, and that was the only things that they would buy as far as toiletries go. Um, my sister and I figured out kind of early on that if we wanted anything else as far as toiletries go, we were going to have to save up for it ourselves. And what my parents would do was, we had gardens on each side of our house that we were allowed to have, that were like 12 rows on one side and 12 rows on the other. And we grew corn and butter beans and peas and tomatoes, corn. Did I say corn already? Anyway, we had that's what we grew. And so my siblings and I would we would have to work the 24 rows of garden, all of that food. We had to mow the grass for what was left of the grass, like what wasn't taken up by garden. We had to mow that grass. We had to wash the dishes. We had to wash the clothes and hang the clothes. We had to clean the house. My mother cooked, but that was really we had to make sure everything was cleaned back up every time that she cooked meals. We all had like those kind of responsibilities where we had to do all that kind of stuff. So if you did all your things, you would get $1 per week. And I would save up my dollars so that I could buy not shampoo, but conditioner, toiletries, like feminine products, and toothpaste, toothbrushes, and any toiletry that you would think of that somebody would need. If it wasn't shampoo or bar soap, like deodorants, things like that, we saved our dollars up to actually buy toiletries. Also, another thing that we had to save our money up for was school supplies, because my parents would buy paper and pencils, and that was the only thing. So like like if you needed anything else, you were on your own. So like the year that I took chemistry, I had to take my allowance money and go buy a calculator. And unfortunately, I didn't have very much money, so I bought like the cheapest calculator I could find in the store. And it wasn't really a good enough calculator to handle chemistry because it was solar powered, and it was just very hard sometimes to get it to work. And so I struggled in chemistry just to get my calculator to do the things I needed to do. And so my grade was not great. I'll just say that. My grade was not great. But anyway, one of the things that my parents did to help with the groceries was the gardening. We did that. And so we would garden, and we would put up, we had a deep freezer, and we would fill it with all these butter beans and corn and peas and all that kind of stuff. And then we also had, he would get one calf every year, and then we would raise the calf, and obviously then butcher that calf, and then eat eat off that meat for the year coming. So we always had meat in the freezer, and we also always had vegetables because of that. But another thing that they did to offset some of the expenses was my mom did all the work so that we would qualify for food stamps, which would be like SNAP benefits now. You know, like you're back in those days, you were given a little book with like paper money and they would just rip it out of the little book. So that was one way. And then also when they would do the WIC distribution, I don't know if that's called something different now, but it was where they would hand out stuff like powdered milk and powdered eggs and stuff like that. My mom would also go and get that. For me, obviously one of my challenges was actually having to save up my own money to buy toiletries and school supplies. You know, most kids were coming to school and they were popping that dollar into a vending machine, but not me. I'm like, I have to hold on to this because I might need it. Another challenge was back in those days when you filled out your free lunch application, there was this little box on there that said, if you receive food stamps, just check this box. You don't have to fill out the income information. So my mom would never fill out the income information. She would just check the box. But for some reason, the school teachers did not understand this. And so every year I would hand them the application so that they could put it in with my regular papers. And then they would call me up in front of the class and say, if your mom wants you to get free lunches, she's going to have to fill out the income information. And so then I would have to say, my mom says, because I learned after the first year or two, my mom says that there's a box there that says if you get food stamps, just check the box and then you don't have to fill out all this information. And so then the teacher would say, oh, okay. But see, all the kids in the class just heard this whole conversation. They've heard not only am I qualifying for free lunches, but I'm also getting food stamps. And it was embarrassing. I wish that back then, maybe teachers know better now, but I wish back then that they had shown the teachers or explained to them, and also that the teachers would have been a little more discreet. That would have been nice because they always said it like right in front of the other students. Hey guys, look who's here. Okay, so I know that's an abrupt end to my video. Basically, I looked at the clips that I had and they were way, way too long for one video. So I'm cutting this into 2 parts. And so I hope that you will come back next Wednesday when I have the rest of this video uploaded so that you can get the end of it.
All right, well, that's going to do it today. For the long run, I'm Joel.
And I'm Christy.
Don't forget the long run. Give yourself a little grace.
Bye.